And so I think listening to that feedback from our kids too is important, like it does feel really frustrating though when you're trying to get something through to your child and they don't seem to be understanding what you're saying. But sometimes it's not about saying it louder, it's about saying it different.
Motherhood has lots of wonderful moments that fill our hearts and give us a purpose. And it can leave us feeling alone, filled with self doubt, and the ever popular mom guilt. Are you tired of trying to pretend like you have it all together? Me too. Welcome to Mom Essentials with me, your host, Angie Weber, for real life advice, new approaches to parenting, and totally inspiring stories from experts and other moms. A place to come as you are with your messy bun, yoga pants, and all to embrace the best and messiest parts of motherhood. So grab that cup of coffee or your favorite glass of wine while we focus on empowerment over perfection. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Mom Essentials. Emotion can get big in families, with our kids and honestly ourselves. But today, my guest, Jennifer Elmberg, is going to help add some more tools to your emotional toolbox. Jennifer is a psychotherapist, author, and mental health advocate based in northern Minnesota. She owns and operates Align North, a private practice where she supports clients in building emotional resilience and finding alignment in their lives. Jennifer is the author of Maury's Magical Mind Garden, a heartfelt child's book that helps young readers navigate big feelings through curiosity and compassion. Outside the therapy room, she creates funny, relatable, and educational mental health content on TikTok, making emotional wellness more accessible and less intimidating. So thanks for hanging out with me today, Jennifer.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to
Yeah,
be here.
yeah, good. I'm happy for you to be here too. I think, I love emotional, like learning emotional regulation, emotional intelligence. I think it's so important. And it's funny that I say that because I feel like I didn't really understand it until about a couple years ago. And so that was like one of those like aha light bulb moments for me as I was going through my healing journey and really discovering like how to listen to our bodies, how to use safe and healthy coping skills, all these different things that I just didn't really know that there were terms out there for. And so
Yeah,
even in my calm approach, the L stands for learning emotional regulation, but typically it's because I want the parents to learn how to do it so,
exactly.
so that they
Yeah,
teach their kids to do it. And you are, really, I know that you help parents as well, but
yeah,
focusing with your like book and everything about how can we teach kids this in kind of a younger manner, a younger time. So I would love for
yeah.
you to share with my listeners a little bit more about what inspired you to write the book and why are you so passionate about emotional resilience?
Yeah. So really in my work as a psychotherapist and then also just as a mom, and like you said, we didn't learn a lot about like naming our emotions when we were kids and talking about our emotions or even just being allowed to have emotions as children. And so as a parent, I was like, I don't know how to teach my kids how to like handle these big emotions. And then when I became a therapist, it was like learning to be able to teach my kids that. And so I really wanted parents to be able to have like these tools to teach their kids without having to go to school to become a therapist. Like I think it should be accessible to everyone. And I really think the younger that we can teach kids how to take care of their mental health and how to name their big emotions and what to do with them, and that it really is okay to have these emotions, that they're a normal part of our, just growing up and being human.
Yeah.
The more we can teach them that, the more we're going to have emotionally resilient adults who are able to manage lives and families and all of that. So
Yeah.
that's really where it comes from for me.
Yeah, I love this. And I love how you say that it's throughout the book, it's really helping young readers navigate their big feelings with curiosity and compassion. I would love for you to speak a little bit more on that.
Yeah. So often I hear from even like whether it's an adult or a child in my office and even from my own kids, so often I hear like, I just don't want to feel this way, or I want you to take away my anxiety. I want you to take away my feeling sad because it doesn't feel good to feel those things. And so I think approaching it with curiosity and compassion really helps people understand that this is just a part of the human experience. We all experience big emotions. We all experience these things that aren't always so fun to deal with and that we don't really want to feel, but it kind of normalizes it and puts it into context that like, yes, everybody has, anxiety and sadness and, big emotions that they have to deal with and find a way to manage.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no bad feelings, right? They're just
Exactly.
feelings.
Yep. Yeah, they have no, there's no good or bad. It's just, you know, they're just feelings. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really important because you mentioned this before when we first started talking about like naming feelings. And I think that
Mhm.
from people, in our generations, it's that we were told don't feel that way. Like anger got a bad
Exactly.
reputation where like
Yeah.
you should never be angry or don't be sad or it's not a
Yep.
big deal. And so that
Hmm.
really made us feel like, well, it must be wrong what I'm feeling or these emotions aren't okay to be feeling. But as you said, they're normal. Everyone feels
Yeah,
sometimes
exactly.
sad and jealous and
Hmm.
whatever this thing is. So one of the things that I hear though from so I love how you're normalizing the feelings things. I
Hmm.
guess there's a couple different questions I want to ask. So maybe I'll start
Yeah.
and this is what I, have come to find, and maybe you have some good advice, especially from your profession. I think it's really easy when we say, like, hey, name your feelings. It's easy to say, well, I'm angry or I'm sad. But
Hmm.
emotions seem to really layer on top of each other sometimes, where we might say,
Hmm.
like, we're angry, but really it's because we're scared or we're very jealous or we feel embarrassed. So, can you talk a little bit how to start identifying those feelings if maybe my listeners are new, or how to start telling their children how to start like identify the feelings?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question because it can be like there's so many emotions that go, oftentimes when we feel angry, we don't just feel angry, we feel sad or frustrated or anxious or, scared, like all of these other, this mix of emotions that kind of come along with one big emotion. I think start with what so like if the basic like anger, sadness, anxiety, if happiness, like if those basic emotions, like start with those and then explore a little bit deeper. There's some really great resources like the Wheel of Emotions. If you ever, you can just get on Google and Google Wheel of Emotions, and that'll kind of give you an idea of like the names of all the other feelings, just so you can start like learning how to identify these other names. And then really like thinking inward. So, like, what do I feel when I feel angry? And it really starts with parents, I think. And then we teach our kids how to identify that in their body. So, for me, it's like, oh, if I am anxious or scared, like I know I'm gonna feel a little like upset in my stomach, and I might be like feel like I can't eat or I can't, whatever,
Yeah.
or like I'm gonna throw up or something along those lines. And so like teaching my kids, like that's how I feel when I get scared or nervous or whatever, and it's normal. Like I know that that's just my body's way of telling me that I feel this way. So like helping, kind of identify, and it really starts with parents learning to identify what their emotions feel like in their own bodies and being able to name it for themselves in order to like recognize it in their kids and teach their kids like, oh, this is how anger might show up in your body, or being afraid or whatever might show up for you.
Yeah, I love that. And I go back to the curiosity point of view that you said, because again, in my calm approach, I say the A's for awareness and accountability, but I always tell parents, like, this is where you get to become curious. This is where you get to become
Yeah.
a detective. Because again, even though like emotions can mask, on top of each other, a lot of times children's behaviors are really have a root cause to it, but we just assume and we just jump to conclusion. And that's when things like maybe unintended or intended come out of our mouths that are saying, this isn't a big deal. Why does it matter to you? Like, just get over it. And again, I
Hmm.
think that ties back to a lot of what happened to us when we were children, where we stopped listening to our body because we were being told, again, intentionally or unintentionally, most of the time, that we were wrong. And so
Yeah.
Yeah, and then us teaching our kids, I mean, that's such an huge part of it because our kids are watching us all of the time. And if we really sat back and became curious about what their behaviors are trying to tell us, but also where they
Mhm.
develop some of these patterns, I think we could probably see a lot in ourselves in that.
Well, even getting curious about what our behaviors are telling us too, like about ourselves,
Yeah.
I think,
Mhm.
yeah, it can often start with that. Is just, there's times where if I really reflect inward on myself, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm doing that, or oh, that's why I'm feeling
Yeah.
that way, when I really stop and think about it. And then that explains to me like why maybe my kids are feeling the way that they're feeling about something, or, somebody else is feeling like it gives me more empathy and compassion for my kids, my family, my husband, everybody. If I can actually identify why my behaviors are, coming out the way they're coming out because of emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it's harder when we're adults and we're trying to figure that out because it is so uncomfortable and we haven't been
Yes,
taught
yeah.
a ton about how to actually express it. Instead, we just want to shut it
Right.
down and numb it out because that's easier. And no one
Yeah.
knows their feelings all the time.
Well, exactly. And a lot of times, in a lot of, I think anybody, millennial and up, and maybe even younger than that, too. But a lot of it was just like, if you are feeling something other than happiness, don't show it. Like, nobody needs to know. Don't talk about it. Just, like keep that to yourself. And it really did not do us any favors, because now we're just kind of all walking around with these like repressed emotions that we don't know how to identify as adults, and having to learn it all. So I'm excited for future generations, because I think that they are going to have the cutting edge when it comes to being able to identify like how they feel. And even sometimes when I'm in the like grocery store, or the, Target or wherever, I'm like, oh my gosh, like listening to a, kid have a meltdown or something, and like hearing, parents talk to their kids now is so different, even compared to like 15, 20 years ago. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. This is so great.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So since you're saying that, I want to get into something that maybe because I know you've been online a lot and you're on TikTok and I'm sure you've gotten maybe a handful of, pushback remarks. But when you
Mm-hmm.
say that, I'm all about it. Like, let's teach our children how to identify their emotions and let's get them really comfortable with having these different feelings so that they can use better tools in order to what I like to call get back to their sweet spot of emotions. But what
Yeah.
do you say to those people that go, well, you're just raising entitled brats. Like they don't need to feel all their feelings. They need to buck up because the world is tough and they're going to find out one day.
Yeah. Oh, and there are so many people out there that are like, oh, they just like stop doing that, or stop, like that doesn't work or whatever. And my response is often like, it hasn't worked for us either. Like the way that we were parented also didn't work for us. So like when you know better, you do better, and you try to do something different. And and I had heard not that long ago, like your parents' ceiling is your floor. And I absolutely love that, because it just means like, and that's often my response too, is like, so my parents did the best they could with the information they had. And yeah, it wasn't always great for me. And, it wasn't always super productive, making me a emotionally resilient person, but they did the best they could with the information they had, and with their own baggage and their own stuff. But their ceiling was my floor. And so I got to start where they left off, and I got to grow. And that's really what we're trying to do with kids. And we're trying to teach them how to communicate, not to entitle them, not to use it as an excuse, and not to say, like, oh, well, yeah, you're feeling angry. It's fine to go punch someone. That's not at all what anybody is saying.
Yeah.
They're saying like, anger is normal. Everybody feels it. It's all about how you react with it. It's all about what you do with that, and really teaching our kids how to manage those emotions, not entitling them to behave however, they want to behave.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that their ceiling is your floor. I've never heard that before, but
Yes.
I think it's amazing. And just such a good reminder that yeah, when we know better, that's why I say like we're upgrading the tools, we're restocking
Exactly.
our toolboxes because we have more information, we know more things. And obviously we have a lot more resources like Mari's Magical Mind Garden. Uh,
Yeah.
there is a great book for both parents and children to read together, and kind of what I want to get your thoughts and feedback on because this is what I hear from a lot of parents. And let's say that we have an adult, a parent that they're understanding it, like they've been working on their
Mhm.
own emotional regulation. They have some of their safe coping skills that they can go to, and then they find themselves that their children are having these really really big emotions and they don't know what to do when their child's emotions are getting really high. What kind of advice would you have when they're having those really big emotions?
Like when their child is having those really
Yes.
big emotions, I think it's always important to check in with yourself. Friend of mine who's also a therapist always says like the kids in the room are going to be as regulated as the least regulated adult in the room. And so if you're not regulated, if you're like freaking out and whatever, your kid is going to feed off of that, whether they're calm or whether they're having a big emotion too. So you always have to kind of stop and check in with yourself first and make sure like you have taken a deep breath, you have, done whatever it is that you need to do to like get yourself calm, splash some water on your face, take a cold drink, whatever, and then go and approach your kid and name those feelings. Um, really, get down to their level, eye contact. We have mirror neurons that help us connect with each other and regulate each other's emotions. And so when we can do that, when we can make eye contact with our kid and stay calm and regulated, we can help bring them down. So the more we get upset and grandiose or big with
Mhm.
our emotions, the bigger our kids are going to get. If you've ever had a screaming match with somebody, like it doesn't go down because you're screaming louder. It usually just gets louder.
Jennifer, if I
Um,
just talk louder, they're going to actually listen, though.
yeah. That's sometimes the way it feels. It really does.
I
And
know.
I know because I've been there
Yeah.
myself as a parent, like where I'm like, oh, like I feel so activated. And so I will talk louder. And then I realize like, oh, I am like, or, my oldest son and I've made plenty of mistakes with him, but I love that he's always called me out and he's always, been, and he's 23 now, but he's, always been good about that. But he would always go, "Why are you yelling at me?" And I would have to stop and be like, "Oh, I am kind of yelling," because I didn't always realize that I was like I was just feeling big. And so I would get louder because I wanted him to hear me, or I wanted him to pay attention. And so it really wasn't getting through to him because immediately when he thinks I'm yelling at him, even if that wasn't my intention, he's going to shut down and his defenses are going to go up. And
Yeah.
so it would calm me down enough to like lower my voice and try to talk to him, and then that would regulate him and we could actually have a conversation that would go somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I think listening to that feedback from our kids too is important, like it does feel really frustrating though when you're trying to get something through to your child and they don't seem to be understanding what you're saying. But sometimes it's not about saying it louder, it's about saying it different.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great when kids call us out. It can be really frustrating
Oh yeah.
a moment. But my kids will do that as well, especially like around things like technology. And
Hmm.
so if I'm on my phone or something because I'm looking at work stuff, I remember there was one night we were doing a movie night. And so we all sat down like on the couch and I just instinctually grabbed my phone, didn't even realize that. I think I was just checking my email. And my son's like, "Hey, mom, you said no other screens right now." And I was like, You're right. I did. I did. So now I try make an effort to, if I do have to pick up my phone for a work thing, outside of regular work order hours when we're like hanging out as a family, I'll say, I just need to check this really quick, and then I check it and put it
Hmm.
down. But I want them to know, like, it's not that I'm not listening to you or that I'm not paying attention. It's there's
Hmm.
time sensitive stuff that I have to look at, unfortunately.
Yep.
So that's why I have to do that. And I think I love how you said, like, it's not about saying it louder, it's about saying it differently. And I will say,
Hmm.
like, through my journey of like therapy and stuff like that, even with just like my husband, that was one of the huge, like, groundbreaking things that we did is really mirror what
Yeah.
others said. And I think that we
Hmm.
can utilize that with children too, of like, I'm hearing this, is that correct? Because
Hmm.
miscommunication is often a huge component of stress in houses, is that we say, well, no, that's what you said. And then they could say, that's not what I meant, though. And it's like
Right, exactly.
different languages.
Yeah, yeah. I love mirror language and like reflecting back to somebody what you thought you heard them say or whatever, because often even myself, like if somebody says something back to me, it's like, well, wait, that's not the way I meant it to come off, or that's not the way I meant it. And I think that's so important that we do with other people is like, I heard you say XYZ, is that correct? Or did I understand that right? It gives them a chance to be able to backtrack and regroup and say it differently to each other too. So yeah, absolutely so important.
Yeah. And I mean, I think probably some of my listeners are like, well, this really sounds great. Like, all right, I can try, take that pause that we hear about all of the time. And it's really hard in the moment though to do,
It is.
because if we're already outside of our sweet spot of emotions, it's going to be even harder for us, like, to be mirroring what our children are if they're out of, regulation in their emotions. So, because
Oh,
that's what I
absolutely.
hear a lot is like, this sounds really great. I don't know how to take that pause. Like, I just find myself from 0 to 60. What would you tell those parents out there that say that?
Practice, practice, practice. So when you are in a normal state, when you are calm and regulated and all of that, reflect back to those conversations that you wish would have gone differently with your kids or with your partner or whoever, and really practice. Like, what would I have wanted to say instead? And what would I have said if I were in a more regulated um body, and emotional state, and think about that and visualize yourself saying that and doing those things. Journaling can be great for that, like writing it out actually, or even just if you have some sort of reflective practice at the end of the day where you think about, the conversations that you have had during the day and what you wish you would have said differently or what went well and what you want to do better.
Yeah.
But it really takes practice. Like we don't expect um like if you're playing football for the first time and you've never played football before, like I wouldn't expect somebody to go out on the field and like just nail everything. Like that doesn't come naturally, right? We practice and we run the plays and you do the things that help you become a better football player. And it's the same thing with parenting. Like most of us coming out the gate have never been parents before, and so we don't know exactly what we're supposed to do. And same thing, like we maybe have never been a wife or a husband before or whatever, like it's you don't always know what to do and say. And so reflecting and visualizing is practice. And practicing as often as you can when you are in a regulated body helps you really be able to take those pauses, and also identifying the way that emotions show up for you. I think that's a really important, if like, okay, I start to get this feeling in my heart or in my stomach or in my hands or whatever when I'm angry or when I'm anxious or when I'm whatever. And that's usually when I tend to react poorly or when I tend to yell or when I tend to whatever, then to catch it immediately and try to regulate yourself a little bit quicker. Gives you a little bit more time to pause. So practice makes perfect when it comes to pausing.
And even if you don't get it down perfectly, you're still doing better than you were doing before. And
Absolutely. 100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Now, of course, I think with the pandemic, I've said this before in the podcast, I think it really opened up a lot of conversations around mental health. I think we still have quite a ways to go, but I think it definitely broadened the horizon for a lot of people of understanding mental health and knowing that people, deal with a lot of different issues when it comes to mental health. And so, of course, there's people like yourself, therapists and psychotherapists and counselors that they can go see and talk through. And there's also really good resources out there if they're not ready for that step, like social media. So I know
Mhm.
that you've been on TikTok a lot, going out there and sharing, your message. Tell us a little bit about that journey, why you decided to get on social media and what kind of responses you've been seeing with that.
Um, yeah, I just really wanted people to see like therapists as human and people who are, in a professional position as human beings. Like we are human and we are capable of having our own struggles and our own difficulties. And also, like, I'm not just telling people to practice these things or whatever. Like, I'm also applying them to my daily life. Like, I am also using all of the tools that I talk about. I also use it as a reflection for me too. And it's motivation, so the more I talk about um, self-care or any of these things on whether it's on TikTok or Facebook or anything like that, the more apt I am to use it for myself, the more I'm like, yeah, got to practice what I preach. So, the more I take a pause and do these things that help me. Um, and also just reducing the stigma around mental health, just getting it out there that it is, I do want people to know that it's okay to not be okay. And that it's all right to show up in whatever capacity you're in that day, that's okay. You're still showing up. I want people to know that that's okay. I really want that to be the big takeaway for people.
Yeah, I love that. Well, of course, that they can get information from you because all of the links are going to be in the show notes. They can go check out Mari's magical mind garden and grab it for their house. They can go check you out on social media. But Jennifer, as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you would like to leave my listeners with, whether it comes to emotions for their children, themselves, or any other common thing that you feel parents need to hear?
Oh, one of my favorite quotes is doing your best looks different every day.
Mm.
And so I use that in all areas of my life, whether parenting or work, anything like that. And so for me, like, I try to remind myself that like whatever my best is for that day, it's not like I don't need to compare myself to yesterday or to tomorrow. I can just do the best that I can today in whatever um, state that I'm in today, however that might look, and if I need support or if I need help. And so I think that that can be really helpful to parents, especially just to like recognize that if I'm doing my best, that's enough. Like it doesn't matter if I am, having a harder day. If I'm showing up and I'm trying the best that I can, that's enough.
Mm, what an interesting, like, I feel like we could go off on a whole wild this, because I really love what you just said. We won't, listeners, don't worry, I'm going to land the plane. But doing your best looks different every day. I think that's such an important perspective because a lot of the times we think about, well, my best looks different than the person down the street or the person
Mhm.
on the other side of the road. And so often we get caught up in this conversation, especially because of social media, of the highlight reels
Yes.
that we see from other people. And we think that, Susie down the street has everything together. It turns out that she
Yep.
was just yelling at her kids to put on socks for their family picture for 4 hours. Like,
Exactly. Yep.
everyone's house looks different. Everyone has messy. It just looks different. But I think it's also important that besides, yeah, comparing ourselves to other people, we don't hold ourselves too high of a standard for ourselves as far as like, well, a year ago I could have made the Halloween costumes and done the cookies for the bake sale and done this and done that. And every season of life brings so many different changes and sometimes challenges, that I think that's just a great reminder of like we don't have to be too hard
Yes.
on ourselves just because maybe we
Yep.
got done more or less yesterday. Um,
Exactly. Yep.
I love it. That was such a great way to end here. Again, just
Yeah.
thoughts for our listeners. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for hanging out with me
You.
today on the podcast. And of course, listeners, head to the show notes. You're going to be able to get connected with Jennifer. You're going to be able to grab up the book and check out what she's doing on social media and all of the things. So, of course, listeners, stick around for the Essential Minute coming up next, and we will see you next time on Mom Essentials. Hey, thanks for sticking around for this Essential Minute. Let's be honest, regulating your emotions as a parent isn't always easy. And we talked a lot about tools that we can use from Jennifer today in this episode. But whether it's your toddler melting down or you reacting to your own limit, staying calm takes support. And that's where doTERRA Serenity can help. This restful blend is a great companion for emotional regulation. Diffuse it during your own cool down moments, add it to your bedtime routine, or just simply roll it on your pulse points when you're feeling overwhelmed. When we can regulate ourselves, we model exactly what we want our kids to learn, and it starts with a moment of calm. Now, if you want to add serenity to your own toolbox, check out the show notes for the link. Happy oiling!
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Mom Essentials. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a review or contact me through my website, theparenttoolbox.info, or follow me on Instagram at theparenttoolbox.